We started working on the piece over the internet via Zoom in the start of rehearsals, and for me it was an interesting change of dynamic because usually obviously we work together in the studio, and as a creative I felt it kind of presented a lot of problems because I think as a choreographer when I work with the company I come to the studio with only kind of a handful of ideas and a bit of an outline, and the creative process is really how I work with the dancers and kind of I'm inspired by their movements and their collaborations with me, and the work kind of evolves, and I think having that distance across the internet it kind of took away some of that freedom and creativity.
So this piece began on Zoom. It started as an idea that we thought was going to be filmed over Zoom and there would be that distance, and then we were actually fortunate enough to be brought together. But the beginning idea of this piece was to discover how we would work independently in a cohesive piece, trying to bring two different perspectives and obviously learning at different times into a piece where we're dancing together and dancing as a pair and as a couple. It was a really interesting challenge then as the process went on. Obviously that idea changed and evolved, and it allowed us to really explore the relationship with each other and with the piece that we had, and allowing us to create that bridge between both ideas. It was really interesting creating a piece rather than just sort of learning past steps. I think it really allowed for a collaborative feel to the piece rather than getting corrections, obviously, that a lot of people normally get. It's allowed to allow us to bring our own interpretation into the piece, and I think that's what I really enjoyed, that we were given the opportunity to put our own spin and our own ideas onto this piece, whereas in a lot of other roles you have to sort of reserve that part and you have to demonstrate the steps as they were choreographed, whereas this we were given a lot of freedom with the vibe of the piece, and we were allowed to improvise and see how that worked for each of us.
Yeah, so originally the idea was dancers working independently and they were going to create a duet together by kind of digital editing techniques and things like that, so they weren't actually going to meet. But during the process we had the go-ahead to kind of bring dancers back into the studio, and that really kind of changed the game for us because it became a lot more kind of involved and a lot more submersive as a creative process, and we were able to kind of create movement that was from trial and error with the dancers. So things might have worked kind of in my mind, and when we worked together as a group it might not have been quite the same, and we were able to modify and make tweaks, and that was a much smoother process for us.
So compared to Ballet Theatre, it was completely different, where Ballet is a narrative, so it was a very clear pathway and character to follow, whereas Disconnect was more abstract, and although it began with the theme of isolation, it developed into what I would call a quite Forsyth style inspired piece that didn't really have a clear narrative to follow. So instead it was kind of up to Liv and myself to really give a good atmosphere that that followed what Mr. Moore was looking for. And for me, I felt that was more of a challenge to do because it was more of a complicated process, but at the same time it brought that extra level of reward when we were filming it, because it was something that, one, I'm not completely used to doing. The style was certainly different from my natural comfort zone, but it was also too, much more interesting as well.
I think, honestly, when I work with a company, most of my work is very narrative based, and it was a lovely excuse to do something completely different and something really abstract. We chose to do a full colour look with the costumes, where the dancers repeat the same costume in 4 different tones, and that was to kind of mimic and take inspiration from the kind of neon lighting that we wanted to use in the piece, and the idea of kind of chopping and changing between the colour landscapes was, I think, something that was kind of conceived to keep the audience engaged and to kind of embrace the kind of fast-paced ideas that we were putting together.
So we were originally going to be filming over Zoom, but luckily, because of the government restrictions changing, we were able to perform our piece in an abandoned factory, which was really interesting because it wasn't a scenario that I was used to, but there was also that same adrenaline rush that you get from when you were performing on stage. Performing to a camera, again, a little bit different, but I still really felt like I was in the moment, especially with the costumes and the really wonderful lighting. It really made for an experience that, although it wasn't exactly the same as performing on stage would have been, I certainly felt it was just as valuable.
It felt really nice to be able to actually do Pas de Deux again. It's been so long because of obviously COVID and government guidelines that we've been able to work within close proximity to each other. So it's really nice to be able to explore that element of ballet again. It's been such a long time for both me and Michael to work closely with another person, so you have to do a lot of re-evaluating and relearning of a lot of skills and understanding that you are working together as a team and it is a two-person job trying to get that connection right. And it was really nice to be able to build on that again, especially just before we head out, hopefully into the industry, trying to get that relationship back, that working relationship. I really enjoyed this process as a whole. I feel like it was a really good learning opportunity to work with new environments and often in roles that you're not used to, but you adapt and you learn, and it's a very good opportunity to learn versatility as a dancer. I think one of my favourite parts has been learning the new challenges and having to work with challenges as they present themselves. So whether that be changing in original ideas of a piece or changing whether it's to be filmed at home or in the studio or on location, I've really enjoyed the ability to be able to learn new skills that I hope I can keep with me for a really long time into my career.